We love great escape stories, don't we? We think about what it means to be able to get out of something that we really don't want to be in. Show of hands, who's ever played Monopoly? Almost everybody. Monopoly. You go around that board over and over again and you're trying to collect these different spaces. And as you're playing that game, there's this going to jail spot, or you get caught in jail if you land on that spot. And what you want is to get the get out of jail free card, so that if you ever do land on that spot and have to go to jail, you get to get out instantly. You don't have to go to jail anymore. We love that concept. We love being able to get away with not having to be somewhere that we don't want to be. But the weird thing is that we have these things called escape rooms now. Anybody ever been to an escape room? I've gone with my family before, and I went with my kids, and the concept of it is you get locked in this room and you're not supposed to get out for 1 hour. And so you spend the entire time that you're in that room looking for clues, and they might have a hole hidden underneath a box, and you've got to use a fishing pole to get something with a magnet out of that hole. And it's the next clue to be able to get to getting out of that space. We love that idea of being able to escape and to get out. And of course, then there's the idea of prison, actually going to prison. And I know in the past I've watched some movies that were really interesting about people escaping from prison. Hopefully they were good people. Hopefully they didn't actually do what they were put in jail for. But we love that idea of being able to escape and to get out. Did you know that God wrote the best escape story from prison? God actually takes one of his people and he lets them free, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. I love this story, and I'd like for us to look at it this morning. If you have your Bibles, look at Acts chapter 12. And I'd like to read 1 through 5. Acts chapter 12, 1 through 5. Acts chapter 12 and verse 1. About that time, Herod the king laid violent hands on some who belonged to the church. He killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And when he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. This was during the days of unleavened bread. And when he had seized him, he put him in prison, delivering him over to 4 squads of soldiers to guard him, intending after the Passover to bring him out to the people. So Peter was kept in prison, but earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. So King Herod is in control. He's this leader over all of the Jewish people. He's the king in the area. And so as the church is growing and all these different events are taking place, Herod finally takes this advantage, and he's going to lay violent hands on Christians. He's going to start persecuting Christians. He puts James, the brother of John, to death by a sword. He has him cut and chopped up. And when he sees that the Jews like that, when he sees that all the Jewish people like that he's killing Christians, he goes and seizes Peter. Peter, of course, is one of the apostles, and he gives that first church sermon that we would think of on the day of Pentecost. He's this powerful leader. He's able to heal people and do miraculous things by the laying on of his hands and by speaking the word. He's a very powerful man in the church, and it's all because Jesus made him that way. And so during that time, they arrest Peter, except it's the Passover. And yet again, it's very similar to Jesus' arrest. They were trying to take care of things around the Passover so that they could do it right. And so Herod says, I'm going to hold on to him till after the Passover, and then I'll bring him out before the Jewish people and let them decide what's going to happen to Peter. Let them take part of it. And I think we can all imagine what would happen to Peter if he goes before those people. And so he's kept in prison. There are 4 squads of soldiers that guard him. So there's 16 men that guard 1 man. And as Peter's sitting there in chains, he's got all these 16 guards around him. What hope is there in their time of him getting out of jail, getting out of prison? And so the church is praying for Peter. If he dies, they lose a great leader. They lose someone that has done wonderful things for them. and has been a great instrument for Christ. And they don't want that to happen. They're praying for him. And they want him to be released. Let's look at 6 through 17. Verse 6 through 17. It says, "Now when Herod was about to bring him out on that very night, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers, bound with two chains, and sentries before the door were guarding the prison. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood next to him, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him, saying, 'Get up quickly.' And the chains fell off his hands. And the angel said to him, 'Dress yourself, put on your sandals.' And he did so. And he said to him, 'Wrap your cloak around you and follow me.' And he went out and followed him. He did not know what was being done by the angel was real, but thought he was seeing a vision. When they passed the first and the second guard, they came to the iron gate leading into the city. It opened for them of its own accord, and they went out and went along one street, and immediately the angel left him. When Peter came to himself, he said, 'Now I am sure the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from the hand of Herod and from all the Jewish people were expecting.' When he realized this, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose other name was Mark, where many were gathered together and were praying. And when he knocked at the door of the gateway, a servant girl named Rhoda came to answer. Recognizing Peter's voice, in her joy she did not open the gate, but ran in and reported that Peter was standing at the gate. And they said to her, 'You're out of your mind.' But she kept insisting that it was so, and they kept saying, 'It is an angel.' But Peter continued knocking, and when they opened, they saw him, and they were amazed. But motioning to them with his hand to be silent, he described to them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And he said, 'Tell these things to James and to the brothers.' And then he departed and went to another place." So the night that all of the events are supposed to take place for Peter's death, something very amazing happens. God sends this angel to go into the prison, and he knocks Peter on the shoulder. "Wake up, Peter." And then all of a sudden the chains fall off of his wrist, and he's free. And the angel says, "Put your sandals on." Okay, put your cloak around you. And there are guards in the prison. They're supposed to be watching him. They're supposed to be paying attention to all these events, and yet they can't do anything. Later, we see that it's like they didn't see anything happen. They didn't hear anything happen. And so he tells Peter, "Stand up and follow me." And so Peter's following the angel out of the prison, and they go through the gates, and they finally get to this last iron gate, and it just sort of unlocks and opens. And then they start to go down the street, and all of a sudden the angel leaves him. And Peter had thought he was seeing a vision or dreaming a dream the whole time, but he's actually outside the prison. He's free. He doesn't have the chains around his wrist anymore. He's no longer imprisoned. He's had the greatest jailbreak of all time. And so he takes off, and he's going to go to this house that he knows of. And the other Christians are gathered there, and they've been praying for him. And he knocks at the gate. The servant girl comes out. She sees that it's Peter, and she's so excited that she runs off without letting him in. Have you ever been in a situation like that? You got so excited you didn't do the thing you were supposed to do? You saw somebody that you hadn't seen in such a long time, and you forget to greet them, and you're just running around talking about them and saying how great it is that they're there? She leaves him at the gate, and he stays and waits at the gate. And she goes in and starts telling everyone in the room, "Hey, Peter's here, Peter's here." And they go, No, you're mistaken." And then she goes, "No, Peter's outside, he's at the gate." They said, "Oh, it's his angel. He's died." And then they finally go out and they let Peter in, and he gets to describe the story of how he got to escape from prison. I remember there was a lady that had gone to Brazil as a missionary. I was working at her house. I was doing the floor of her laundry room, and I'm sitting there, and I was telling her about one of my kids going to Brazil as a missionary. And she's like, "Oh, the second time that I was tear gassed, I was in Brazil." And I go, "What?" I never would have thought that a lady like her would have been tear gassed more than once. And yet that happened. Can you imagine Peter as he's talking and sharing the different things in his life after this point? He goes, oh yeah, that was the night that God broke me out of jail. What an amazing story. What a thought that God would do something like that, and Peter gets to tell the story, and now we get to read about it in history. There's so much great excitement over him being set free. I'm excited to read about him getting set free. Look at 18 and 19. Now when day came, there was no little disturbance among the soldiers over what had become of Peter. And after Herod searched for him and did not find him, he examined the sentries and ordered that they should be put to death. Then he went down from Judea to Caesarea and spent time there. So the next day, all of a sudden the sun comes up. People in the prison are looking for Peter. Where is he at? What's happened to him? The chains are there. I can still see the spot in the dust or the dirt where he was sitting there. Or I can still see the spot where he was sitting. Where is Peter at? And they're looking for him, and it says that there was no little disturbance. That means there was a big disturbance. They were very concerned about what had taken place. And can you imagine having to go to Herod the king and say, you remember we arrested Peter. He was in prison and we were waiting for today. Well, he's not there anymore. Something about being a prison guard at that time, or a soldier guarding someone, it was very typical that if you were placed over them, if they escaped or if anything happened to them, you would be put to death. And that's what happens. These soldiers that are guarding Peter, he was supposed to be in that place for this moment, except there was nothing they could do about it, and he's gone, and they wind up being put to death by Herod. I love the fact that the king could not stop it. I love the fact that the soldiers could not stop it. I love thinking about them going through and searching for him, and there's this big manhunt for Peter, and yet they can't find him. He's escaped from jail, and they're going around the city and they're looking for him. Have you seen this man? Have you seen Peter? He escaped from prison last night. And to think about one of the apostles escaping from jail, and they're searching for him, and there's a big manhunt, and nobody can find him, that is such an amazing and funny thing to me. But I love that God did that. I love that he set Peter free. I love that he recorded that for us so that we can see what he did for his people and how much he cares for us. Look at one more text with me. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. And I'll read 6 through 18. Second Corinthians chapter 4, verse 6 through 18. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of the darkness," has shone in our hearts to give the light of knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are inflicted in every way but not crushed, perplexed but not driven to despair, persecuted but not forsaken, struck down but not destroyed, always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifest in our bodies. For we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus may be manifest in our mortal flesh. So death is at work in us, but life in you. Since we have the same spirit of faith according to what has been written, I believe and so I spoke. We also believe and so we also speak, knowing that he who raised the Lord Jesus will raise us also with Jesus and bring us with you into his presence. For it is all for your sake, so that as grace extends to more and more people, it may increase thanksgiving to the glory of God. So we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light momentary affliction is preparing us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but also to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. God has the power to set us free. He's the one that spoke and we were made. He's the one that spoke this earth into its existence. He formed us. He made us what we are, and His words have carried us throughout history. His power has carried us throughout history. He can set us free. And we may feel like we're suffering now. Things can get very, very bad. I've been through some tough moments in my life. I've been through some moments where I didn't want to live anymore. But God can set us free, and we can know for a fact that anything that we go through in this time, anything that we're suffering with now, whether it's our health, whether it's something with our family, whether it's something with our job, whether we've lost all our money, no matter what it is, no matter how bad it gets, we can know that in eternity, eternity's better than that. It'll be worth it. There is no comparison of how bad things are now with how great eternity is going to be with God. He says that our bodies, that though they're fragile and the pain of that suffering can often seem like too much to handle, God can set us free. God can make us whole again. He gives us strength, the strength of Jesus, to carry about in ourselves, in our bodies, and will make us free. I know there are times that the struggles of life can make us feel like we've been imprisoned. We can feel like we're chained to that problem. We can feel like we're never going to get out. We have no hope. Can you imagine Peter sitting in that cell knowing it's the night before that he's going to be placed before the Jews and put to death, most likely? Can you imagine how he feels? And I'm sure that he had the hope of eternity. But can you imagine what he was feeling inside as he's waiting for that day and thinking about all the things that he witnessed Jesus go through? And yet, during the night, as he's asleep, he's awoken by an angel shining the light on him. And he's led out of that prison and he's set free. And God can do the same thing for us. No, we might not actually be in jail. I hope we don't go to jail. But we can feel like we're so imprisoned by something that we need His help. And maybe there isn't going to be a physical angel show up that's going to shine light on you and knock you on the shoulder, and chains are going to fall off and you'll be led through the unlocked gates. But God can still set us free. God's got a plan for us, and He has hope and light set before us. The struggles that we have are light in comparison to eternity. We've got to remember that we get to look forward to sitting with Christ in the future, being with Him for eternity, serving Him for eternity, praising Him for eternity. And that's exciting. That ought to be something that we can, when we're in those tough moments, that we can think about that and go, I can make it. I can make it. I can make it. Too often we sit there and we keep focusing on the problem instead of focusing on the solution. Our solution is already there. It's already promised to us. We need to obey and follow Him. He can make the chains fall off. There's this type of pottery. It's Japanese. It's called kintsugi. They take a broken pot and they wind up, the pot itself is worthless. It's broken. It's in pieces. But they can take the pieces of that pot and they mold it and put it back together with some valuable metal like gold. And so they'll reassemble the pot. And then it becomes such a valuable piece of art. It's this wonderful work that at one point it had no value. Now it's the most valuable thing. God does that with us. We are these broken pots. We are these jars of clay, and we're seemingly worthless. But He places His word within us, and it changes our value. It changes who we are. It brings us back to being His creation once again, and that value is instilled in us once again. And not only that, but the strength and power of Christ now is within us and holds us together. You see, we are like a human form of this kintsugi pottery. We're worthless without Him. But when we obey Him, and because He loves us, and because Jesus gave His life for us, we now are so valuable. valuable to break us out of an eternal prison, valuable enough that He's going to promise us an eternity of glory with Him, valuable enough that He died on the cross to save us from our sins. This morning, if you need to come to the Lord, if you need that strength to put you back together and hold you together, if you're going through some imprisonment in your life, some kind of struggle or pain or suffering, you can be set free by the Lord. Because I can guarantee you, He tells us that it's not worthy. The pain that we go through isn't worthy of what we look forward to in our future. So whatever your needs are this morning, I ask you to come as we stand and sing.